Today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, in prior episode, I covered the Campbell County female juvenile detention center and its litany of issues regarding their treatment and, of course, the staff there sexually assaulting, having misconduct with minor female inmates in their care. Concerns about this issue came up recently in a legislative hearing where the response from an official with juvenile detention centers, James Sweat, the new man in charge, doesn't really make you feel all that comfortable with the direction of our juvenile detention center systems. We'll go over that. The same people who provide and facilitate and have lobbied for abortion access in KY are coming out strongly opposed to freestanding birthing centers and women getting to choose where they give birth. I'll go over, while these two positions may seem contradictory, it's actually quite clear that there is a common thing they have in common and why they seem to be taking these stances. Then finally, yesterday, I spoke about the Daniel Cameron event going on with Rand Paul in Lexington at 11 a.m. That's going on this Friday, the 20th, 11 a.m. It's going on at pretty much at Fork Bank. There's like an event center right there next to it, but Fork Bank over in the Hamburg area, Officer Barton, 11 a.m. And so I posted the graphic from that, and man, the left went a little crazy, a little nutso on Twitter. We'll go over what they've said in today's episode. As always, though, that last segment going over how crazy the left is on Twitter over Daniel Cameron Rand Paul event, that is available to our podcast only listeners. That is on, of course, iHeart and Apple, Pandora, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and many other places. So if you want to catch that last segment there, head on over and listen to the show on your favorite podcasting platform. But as always, I appreciate you all taking a listen. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you want to reach out to the show, you can email us at info@theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's info@theandrewshow.com. Without further ado, let's dig into it. So within the last week or so, there was a hearing held regarding OC spray, or pepper spray, as some of you may know it as. And so what they were originally talking about was the fact that as they're implementing the use of OC spray, there's been some issues. We've had some issues with overuse, little girls, well, not little girls, but minor females in juvenile detention centers, such as Campbell County's juvenile detention center there run by the state, the one in Campbell County. Issues with girls getting pepper sprayed and punched in the face when it's not necessary, and those issues abound. So in this hearing, they're asking about that use of the OC spray and issues going on. And there's a few lines that came up from a James Sweat, the man that has recently been hired, put in charge, that certainly is alarming and doesn't make anybody feel very comfortable with the direction of our prisons. Let's take a listen to some of his testimony. We're going to start off with this first bit here.
For example, Campbell County, almost everybody there is on probation because we have to hire a whole new staff for that facility. We are teaching them how to use these different things that will help keep the kids safe and staff safe.
So in that, James Sweat, he's talking about how everybody in Campbell County, a juvenile detention center, every worker there is on probation. Why are they on probation? Well, because that county, that juvenile detention center had such huge issues that they had to fire large amounts of the staff, hire in new people that are on probation, new training for people on use of OC spray because of the spraying in the face. And on top of that, current workers are on probation too as well. Doesn't make you feel entirely comfortable with the direction these juvenile detention centers are going on when we have entire prisons where they're saying the majority of the staff there are on a probationary period because they are so new and so freshly trained. And then you wonder why these issues abound, especially when it comes to these issues with these young girls. Now, as I said in prior episodes, one of the most obvious and straightforward ways to address this would have been to put females in charge of females and then the men, of course, in charge of the boys. I believe Campbell County Juvenile Detention Center is the only all-female juvenile detention center in the state. It originally was supposed to be outside of Louisville. Then they moved it to Campbell County, emptied it out of boys. And so that is a female juvenile detention center. And yet they had men working in there. That's what led to these sexual assaults. And you're hearing it there from James that everybody there is on probation. And then you wonder why these issues persist and why these training issues persist. But obviously him saying everybody's on probation, there's training issues, there's misuse of OC spray, and the process we're going through to train people, get everybody on board there, leads to some questions of, well, how are you becoming aware of what's going on? Because, and this will come up here in this testimony, that these issues were going on at Campbell County, not for like a few days, but for like months, and nothing was being done. Let's hear what James Sweat has to say about that.
Okay. And my reason for the question is, especially like on the timeline, we've all recently read what happened in Campbell County, and that, some actions were being taken, sexual assault by an employee. And while everybody at the Campbell County facility seemed to know what was going on, it seems the cabinet and people that could take action did not find out until June, from my understanding. And so I guess I do have some concerns, just making sure this reporting is getting to the right channels, to people that can take actionable, can take actions on it immediately, so that somebody's not getting, misusing OC spray for 3 weeks or a month and a half before it finally gets addressed.
So that is the representative there is laying out a question. Okay, so you've had these issues regarding the use of OC spray. You've had issues in Campbell County. How are we getting those reports? Because like he said, this has been going on for a while, not even addressed until June. And I want to play that for you first to kind of set up the question. And now we'll hear what James Sweat has to say in response. So you know what he was asked. Let's hear what he says in response.
No, that's not going to happen. Okay. And also,
he says, and I'm quoting here, no, that's not going to happen. So what he asked him about was, okay, these use of OC spray, if something goes wrong, if something goes bad, how are you going to find out about it? Because if these issues just continue, you're not going to know about it. He goes, no, that's not going to happen. You're like, okay, that sounds nice. Well, James, can you elaborate on how that's not going to happen for us? Could you fill us in on what you mean by that's not going to happen? Because it happened already. I mean, girls were getting sexually assaulted and punched in the face, and you didn't know about it. So how are you going to know people misuse their OC spray? Well, let's see if his response instills, his continued response to this, instills any kind of real confidence in his leadership.
I started May the 8th, and it's been reported everywhere, over the news and everywhere about Campbell County. And the staff that was in charge there, as soon as I got there, within 2 weeks, I demoted him. And 2 weeks after that, I fired him. I can only fix what I know about. The reports were not getting to me. Once the reports got to me, I took steps to rectify it.
And that was the point of my question.
Yes.
The reports were not getting to you.
Right. But it was due to the staff that were in place at that facility at the time.
Understood.
And as soon as we recognized that they were not doing their job, then we took necessary steps to change that. And it wasn't being reported by anybody in writing. Once we got that information in writing, we took steps to make those changes.
So he gets asked the question, how are you getting this information? And his response was, oh, that's not going to happen. Then goes on He then goes on to explain exactly how this can happen. He goes, yeah, well, the staff wasn't reporting it, and then I don't know about it. And that is exactly, and you heard the legislator say, he's like, that's why I asked the question. Yeah. You had an issue of reports not getting to you while girls are getting punched in the face and sexually, in some ways, sexually assaulted by staff, sexual misconduct by staff against these girls in juvenile care, and you didn't know about it. How are you going to know about this? And his response, well, I didn't know about it because no one told me. Yeah, James. So nobody told you. So what are you doing to fix that? What are you doing to fix that? Let's hear what else James has to say. So if you haven't yet given up on the Beshear's administration's ability to handle these situations, remember, we got the Cabinet for Health and Family Services situation where he's got young kids sleeping on the floors of offices, problem that's been going on for a year. Now we have issues of misuse of OC spray, sexual assault, misconduct by, of course, the people involved, the prison guards or correctional officers involved with this juvenile detention center in Campbell County, this girls' juvenile detention center. Let's see if he can somehow claw back some way that we could feel like maybe they have this handled and we should have confidence in the situation. Let's see if there's a way that we can climb this back. Let's hear another question from a legislator for him.
That prompted a question that I have. You mentioned in writing, but what about the agency's internal hotline where staff were calling and reporting this to the hotline? Who answers that hotline, and are there records kept as to those calls?
Yes, IB in charge. They keep those records.
And is it your understanding, your testimony here today before this committee, that the agency did not receive internal hotline calls regarding the Campbell County incident?
That was my understanding.
So what the legislator there is asking him, okay, he's asking him, he says, okay, so you're talking about this in writing, right, from a response through official channels, but there's a hotline set up for if you are just a normal correctional officer and a situation's not getting addressed, well, how can you reach out? How can you let the administration know so they can go ahead and deal with it? And they say, well, there's a hotline call. Now, I'm going to give James a hot tip, okay? Now, there's some parts of that you missed early on where they talked about some calls being given into the system. And I'm going to give James a hot tip. When you hear a legislator say the words, is it your testimony here today that there were no calls in regards to the Campbell County incident? When you hear a legislator say, is it your testimony here today? In a hearing, I'm going to give you a hint. They already know the answer to that question, and you're not giving them the answer that they were expecting. My guess, and based on the earlier conversation you all didn't get to hear, there was calls being placed about the Campbell County incident that still wasn't being addressed or kept track of. And this guy, James Sweat, unaware of it, oblivious to the fact. I would bet dollars to donuts calls were made because the legislator doesn't ask that question. Is it your testimony here today? If they ask a question in that way, that's not a general inquiry. That is the question of an investigator who already has a piece of evidence against you. And what's funny is after he asked that question, he kind of looks around for a second and is like, okay, like they all know that there was calls. Apparently they're aware of them. And his testimony there today was, I wasn't aware of them. Didn't know anything about it. So you have James here, juvenile detention center. We got a big problem. Female juvenile detention center. We got girls getting punched in the face, sexually assaulted, sprayed in the face with OC spray. We've got a prison with everybody on probation. And the legislators are asking the all-important question, how are you aware of what's going on? How do we respond to that? How do we create a situation that's better off for those young girls in that situation where while they are there serving out a prison sentence, they're not worrying about being raped by a prison guard or punched in the face for just existing. And James just really, he may think he had a good response, but I don't know about you, but do you feel any confidence from that? I don't feel confident from that. Do you feel like he knows what he's doing? I don't. He's over here saying, well, I didn't know about it. Yeah, that's why I asked the question. Well, if I don't get it in writing, then I can't do anything about it. I can only address the things that I know about. Yeah, we know. That's why we're asking about it. Yeah, well, it's because the staff weren't telling me. Okay, what are you going to do to fix that in the future? What about the phone call system? Who is in charge of that? Did Campbell County send you calls? No, I don't think so. Are you really, really sure about that? Because we maybe have some indication that they did call. Nope, no clue. Doesn't make you feel too confident with the way this Beshear administration is handling its business on these all important issues. Coming up after this, speaking of the legislature, we've had some hearings about freestanding birthing centers. We'll talk about the arguments and the Kentucky Hospital Association, of course, coming out strong against it. We'll talk about why after this short break.
Lexington Overstock Warehouse is Central Kentucky's best source for stylish new home furnishings. Don't pay retail. With our low overhead operating structure and big name brands, we offer the absolute best values on new furniture for every room. Shop online anytime at LexingtonOverstockWarehouse.com or visit our weekends only showroom located at 156 West Tiverton Way. Right now, for listeners of this show, we're offering a special discount for our online customers. Use coupon code FREEDOM for an additional 10% off your online order today. Lexington Overstock Warehouse, low overhead equals really low prices.
Listen up, my fellow business owners. You need to get your cybersecurity and IT support under control. Reach out to the folks at Amston today. Call 859-300-0087 or visit amston.com. It is no secret that cyber attacks have become a constant threat, and you need to make sure that your organization is protected. Amston has over 30 years of experience working with businesses and governments alike. Call 859-300-0087 or visit AmstonAMPSTUN.com today. So recently, the legislature has been hearing testimony in their Certificate of Need Task Force about freestanding birthing centers. Freestanding birthing centers, of course, are places that have more of a home setting to it. They do have medical professionals there, clearly, but it creates a different environment for you to be able to, if you're a female, give birth in. Instead of being in this hospitalized environment and just kind of rushed out and everything else, you could have birth maybe in a setting, maybe more like your home, more comfortable, more relaxing, where you don't feel as much like, maybe you're a lab rat and you're doing a very natural thing, giving birth. And so these freestanding birthing centers, places that just want to operate and allow a choice for women to give birth at, I've hit a snag, and it deals with certificate of need. You see, and we've covered this ad nauseum in this podcast about certificate of need, but in the state of Kentucky, if you want to build a hospital, medical facility, you want to offer services or anything like that, you have to ask for permission from the state, which then has to certify with the area providers that they can't handle the level of business. But freestanding birthing centers aren't about there being a lot of women that want to give birth that don't have a place to go. Freestanding birthing centers is about options. What kind of environment do you want to give birth in? And during this hearing, KHA comes out and starts talking about, well, every pregnancy, their line, every pregnancy is normal till it's not. Talking about how at-risk pregnancies in these freestanding birthing centers, if surgeries or things like that are required, they don't have the staff, the expertise on site. And while most births are perfectly natural and normal and everything else, that you do run into situations like that, and, well, they won't be able to respond to it, which on its face seems like a reasonable argument. But when you think about the KHA and the types of people that are in it and who they support and who supports them, you're left asking some questions, because the KHA and its members, the hospitals, have been facilitating and providing abortions for quite some time. The abortion centers have had agreements with hospitals like in Louisville. In order to provide abortions, they have an ambulatory agreement with hospitals in the area. Something they've agreed to. KHA and their members not only providing abortion, but have donated to and promoted, of course, organizations like the KMA, who came out against abortion. So you have a came out against, stopping abortion. So you have an organization that's all about women's reproductive rights, the KMA, that partners up with this KHA all the time. They share members. You got hospitals giving to places like Planned Parenthood and PACS in order to keep abortions rolling, claiming it's about reproductive rights, a women's right to choose. And then when it comes to the choice of where to give birth, now suddenly their desire to allow women to choose the freedom to make a choice dries up. Dries up like a river in a hot sun that hasn't rained in a while. There's not a drop to be found of care about choices. Now, why would that be? Why could it be that the KHA is so against freestanding birthing centers, while at the same time promotes, facilitates, works with individuals, partners with groups that push forward abortion and are all about women's reproductive choices? I mean, if you argue to me that if you're somebody who believes a woman has a right to an abortion, please explain to me how in that same idea of reproductive choice and rights, a woman does not have a right to give birth wherever they want to. In fact, a woman kind of does. You see, this was brought up by Jason Nemes in the hearing. Right now, women can give birth at home if they want to. There is nothing illegal about a woman deciding to not go to the hospital in order to give birth to a baby. She can give birth to it right in the middle of her living room if she so chooses, right in the middle of the kitchen if she wants to. That is not illegal. But yet, for some reason, KHA has an issue with freestanding birthing centers. And there's a reason why. There's a connecting matter. And it's got nothing to do with philosophy or principles. It's got to do with one thing: money. They were for women's right to choose abortion because they make money off of it. Hospital providers make money off of it. And they want to make sure that if you are going to give birth to that child, instead of going ahead and having it murdered at some clinic somewhere that they make money off of, well, they want to make sure you're giving birth to it in a hospital they own, in a place where they can make money off of it. That is the only connecting thread. That's the only thing that makes sense of how you can have these two viewpoints while at the same time fight against it. And what's funny is when targeted on that, as I said, Jason Nemes asked the KHA, the representative there, testifying against it, saying that, well, freestanding birthing centers, they result in some real problems and issues, because, yeah, I mean, women can give birth, but, maybe they can't. I don't know. Maybe there could be issues. And he says, is it legal for a woman to give birth in her home right now? She goes, no. Well, what's the concern here then? Are you advocating for making it illegal for a woman to give birth in their own home? No, of course not. And there's a reason why this is being heard in a certificate of need setting. Talking about certificate of need being held in licensing, occupation, and administrative regulations. That's where they're at. They're not testifying between a healthcare committee. They're testifying between a committee on licensing, occupation, and administrative regulations. Because it's got nothing to do with healthcare. It's got to do with one thing only: regulations that are lobbied for and created by entities with deep pockets in order to make sure they can keep a monopoly and a stranglehold on the market. We literally have hundreds of Kentuckians having birth outside a hospital. They're traveling to neighboring states that do have freestanding birthing centers. This isn't a new idea. It's not like whatever. It's so funny every time the hospitals get involved here in Kentucky, because Kentucky has some of the strictest certificate of need laws. And they claim the world, for some reason, all the regulations and things that work in literally every other state just can't seem to work in Kentucky. It just won't work. Seems odd. Almost like it's got nothing to do with safety, but it's only has to do with money. Only has to do with money. And so where's this going to end up? My guess is, in order to make sure that those hospitals get to hold their stranglehold, get to hold that, there's going to be something in the legislation that says these freestanding birthing centers have to have an agreement with local hospitals. They have to have it in order to make sure that they can maintain their monopoly. Because if you have to go to a hospital in order to be a licensed freestanding birthing center, in order to be allowed to do that, if you have to have an agreement with the hospital, well, now they still get their cut, or they can lock it out completely. And what kind of legislation is that? For a group of people that claim a woman's got a right to choose, suddenly unless, of course, it comes to where you give birth at. And keep in mind, there's nothing illegal for a woman to give birth at home. They suddenly only have an issue with it when there's money to be made on the choice. Now they have a problem. Well, for those of you watching on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, that's all we have for you here on the video format. But for those of you listening to the podcast version, stay with me, because after this, we're going to be talking about a tweet I sent out regarding the Daniel Cameron event. Bear with us here after this short break. Check that out. For those of you listening and watching on the video format, head on over to the podcast form. Listen to this last segment. That's all we have for you guys. But to the rest of you, podcast format, we will be back after this short break.